Hello everybody and welcome to another Mission Makers vlog. Today we're going to be talking about terrain versus design. Today's episode was inspired by a conversation I had with someone else in the ARMA community about what was more important in mission design, whether it was the design of the objective type, or if it was the terrain that the objective was put in. And the conversation was started by what I feel is a misconception as to how important the terrain is over the design of the mission itself. Now, it has been proven through my experience that the mission design is extremely more important than any sort of terrain you could pick. I've made missions on terrain that is completely featureless, such as the desert map on the Cup terrains, which is literally just a oil pipe and some very shallow sand hills. It is almost completely featureless. But more important than anything, it was a experiment I did to see if I could make a mission on that type of terrain. You could argue that desert is an objectively bad terrain. It's very small, there isn't much on it, and there's not much you can do with it. But what I did was I made a compelling objective that the players went through that had an interesting climax and ended in an ultimately short but sweet experience that everyone, at least from what everyone was telling me, they objectively liked. I didn't have much complaints besides a minor bug in a script, but that was due to time constraints or whatever. But anyway, the point being that the type of objective that the players are conducting is more important than the terrain itself. You can make the case that no matter where you put a mission that is too simple, like let's say, for example, eliminate all hostiles in this area, that's a very boring, uninspired type of objective. And it doesn't matter if it was on desert or if it was in the city of Tanoa, it's all going to have the same effect. The gimmick of, having buildings to go through or something may last for a little while, but ultimately it's not going to last very long and it's not going to be a very memorable mission. What I did was, when I spent all my time designing the mission for desert, was that it was created on the basis of there is 4 laptops that have to be captured from 4 different oil rigs. Their positions are randomized in 4 possible locations at each oil rig. They had to find each laptop, and when all laptops were taken, the Apaches that were giving air support around the perimeter would then be free to fire on the rigs themselves and would cause them to explode and make a big fancy explosion, and it was fun. It came down to the wire as right after they captured the last laptop, anti-air guns started to roll in to get rid of the Apaches, and the Apaches were taking fire and even lost their rear tail rotor as they were shooting at the last oil rig with rocket pods. It was an exciting climax, and it was very close, and it was a lot of fun. And that type of objective can work on any terrain. Now, on the flip side, if I was to have a boring mission on an exciting terrain, it wouldn't have the same effect. And this has happened before when I've made missions that are ultimately a simplified objective that doesn't really work very well or isn't very memorable. And you might have experiences like, oh, that time that tank rolled up through the wall and it was, oh my god, it came out of nowhere. Those sort of experiences can come up, but that's not because of the terrain nor the objective. That's just ARMA. You have to argue that there are interesting scenarios that can be created from terrain, but more often they're going to be created from the objective that you're doing, why you're doing it, and what makes that mission memorable. Because you have to remember, you want the mission to be memorable, not the terrain you made it on. Now, I'd also like to preface that I'm not saying that this always is or always will be. In fact, the only thing I'm saying always is that mission design is always more important than the terrain you pick. That's the way I see it. That is the only absolute, as of now, that I'm going to defend. As far as everything else goes, you can have bad missions on bad terrain, you can't have good missions on bad terrain, you can have good missions on good terrain, and they can be objectively better missions. If a good mission is on a good terrain and you're using every available asset you have to you, and you take advantage of how the terrain affects the visibility at certain points of the mission, or how the elevation of that area in the mission affects how you see the rest of it. There are other ways to take advantage of the terrain, but ultimately, if you had to pick one, you would want to pick a better mission over a better terrain. And that also goes without saying that the mission is easier to make than a terrain is. Terrain, you're usually given and you have to work with what you have. And this isn't even connected to the fact that mission design is more important than the terrain itself, but the fact that you also don't have many terrains to work with in terms of your choice. You have much less choice, or I should say you have much less creative freedom in the terrain than you do the mission. And I think that it's important to remember that objectively better missions focus on the design of the mission more than what terrain. Terrain can work as an excellent point of inspiration, and you can see this cliffside and you're like, oh, this will make an excellent area for like there to be a sniper that like breaks up some sort of secret arms deal or something like that. That's cool. That's taking advantage of the terrain. But that is more about the mission design than the terrain. You can pick a cliff from another part of the from another map or a different terrain. In fact, you can even do it without a cliff. You could have them be on a hill, a hill that looks down on a flat plain. And the mission would still be interesting, but the terrain would be different, and the terrain would be less interesting. So we know that there are better and worse terrains. There are better and worse mission objectives. We know that there are better and worse missions, and the best missions take advantage of the terrain and the mission design. But again, if you were to pick one, you definitely want to make a better mission than pick a better terrain. And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.